in front of your mic.
Take one, intro, Kris Abigail.
Hey guys, welcome back to All Packed Up. Super special guest for y'all today. Hunter, who we have?
Today we got Kris Abigail, the butcher, wild game butcher extraordinaire.
Wild Game Butcher. Super excited.
She got the meats, I guess.
Super excited to get her on, hear a little bit about her story. What are you most looking forward to hearing about?
As someone who eats a lot of meat but has never butchered my own meat,
Yeah.
I'd love to learn a little bit more about that process.
Yeah, me too. She's got a very interesting story. We'll wait to...
Don't spoil it.
Yeah.
No spoilers.
Have we said her name already?
Kris Abigail.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, super excited. What's new with Pakmule, though, Hunter?
New with Pakmule.
That shirt's new.
This shirt is new.
I'll tell you that.
You know, I recently got into Poshmark, big Poshmark guy.
Oh, selling or buying?
Buying with the intent of selling, but
Okay.
if any of you are like me, you never sell anything.
Yeah.
I'm a master hoarder. So it's all about the vintage. So this is the vintage Aloha hut, no longer in production. Check them out. 100% that 90s weird material. I feel like if you put a flame near it, it would go up in a second.
Yeah, I like it.
Got
I like
the
whole
chain.
thing, actually.
I'll become a jewelry guy.
Really?
I'm a
Where'd
new
you get
chain
that?
guy. Yeah.
Poshmark?
No, this is from a this is from an individual Instagram seller.
We're talking about.
Mass Santa Fe. Shout out to you, man.
Let me
Give
ask
me
you
a
this.
discount.
Did you buy it, or did someone give it to you?
I bought it.
Okay, that's so cool.
But I tell everybody somebody
It's
gave
not
it
like,
to me.
It's not flashy enough to where it's like.
It's vintage.
Yeah.
I say my dying grandfather gave it to me,
There you go.
but I bought it for
Yeah,
myself.
I wear a ring on a chain. Actually, I don't have it on right now. And I say it's for my grandpa. And I think it is, but it's.
But
like
you bought it for yourself. You got it at TJ Maxx.
Yeah, maybe. Anyways.
Yeah,
What
well,
is
let's
new?
do. I actually talking about being outside. That's what we talk about here.
Yeah.
Spend a couple days on the river, the Guadalupe, and the Kamal here in New Braunfels.
That's why you're looking golden brown.
Am I looking golden brown? I've been rubbing all this brown stuff on me, trying to get that tan. And then Schlitterbahn. If you guys don't know about the world's greatest water park,
World's greatest
I
water park.
chased
Did
around
they
a bunch
say
of
that, or
children.
do you say that?
That's what they say. I think
Okay.
that's what I say.
I like it.
Yeah. What about you?
I mean, I feel great about myself. I wouldn't go in there.
Do you feel great about yourself when you go
just
there?
Some people watching to do there.
No comment. I feel mediocre.
No, what is new with Pakmule is our new series we just dropped.
Oh, that's right. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Should have given me a little tip before that.
Well, by the time this is going to come out, it'll be maybe a month.
If you haven't already, we've dropped a video series. We put a lot of time into it. It's called Educate and Inspire. It's basically, our whole thing here at Pakmule is getting outside, helping you load and go, get on the road, making it simple and easy to make memories, adventures. There's the sales pitch.
Mhm.
But a part of that's a big in our heart. Reason we do this podcast even is getting people the necessary education, inspiration, things they need. Like I don't know how to start a fire.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about fly fishing.
Yeah.
I'm just now getting into this space. But so what we've done is we found some pros who are biking, auto, fly fishing, and way more to come. And we've kind of partnered with them to create some awesome videos to help people, help you learn about those things. Whether it's an intro, basic, what is fly fishing, all the way to tying the knots, getting the right flies, getting the right leads and weights, and getting it done. And it's just like, it's our way, almost like gifting to not only our clientele, but to everybody else out there that like, this is something we care about. We don't just care about selling an awesome product. I mean, we do, buy it, a Pakmule. But we also care about equipping you to use that in the best way, whether it's on a trip or an adventure or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like it should be said it's free to consume this stuff. There is stuff out there, educational wise and inspirational wise, but there's usually like a paywall behind it.
Yeah.
And all this is free. Go see it on YouTube. Go see it on the website.
You just click on it.
Yeah, free to watch.
A click away. Educate and Inspire.
That being said, too, if you have any stories of learning how to fly fish, or this awesome, trip that you went on, or maybe a terrible trip that you went on, send it in. Leave it in the comments. We'd love to read about it. Maybe even go over it on the podcast. Maybe laugh about it.
Yeah, we'd love to include stories of people who listen, who are Pakmule owners even, or just people who follow us and know about us and know about this podcast. We'd love to include those stories. And then, if you're in the space, like you always have the opportunity to maybe get on the podcast as well.
Yeah,
So
that's for sure.
reach out, share those stories, share some pictures, some videos. whatever you got, email them to us, DM us, slide it on in.
Mm-hmm. Well, with that being said, Kris Abigail.
Let's get to it.
Kris Abigail.
Hello.
Welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
Thank you so much.
What up? What up?
What's up?
It's myself, Coleman. Hunter's over there.
Hey.
Producer Haley.
Producer Haley's off.
Hey,
screen.
Haley.
Say hello, Haley.
No, we're trying to make that a thing.
It should just be a thing.
It is.
Just
yeah.
accept it.
Adds to resume.
Yeah.
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 There's multiple producers of them. Nah, I'm okay. You can have the title. Seriously, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, it was
this
great.
has been on the calendar for a little bit, and I remember Hunter dropped your name, and we're like, "Oh yeah, that's a must have." So we're excited to hear about your story and where you came from and what you do now, and just your mindset of being in the outdoors. So what?
Okay.
Where? How did you get to Texas?
So, the long way.
A long way.
Yeah, I was born in El Salvador,
Okay.
in San Salvador, and we immigrated during the Civil War to Chicago when I was 2.
Wow.
So I consider myself pretty much like a
The
Chicago
Salvadorian
native.
Civil War.
Yeah, the Salvadorian
Just-
Civil War.
I'm not gonna lie.
Just to be clear for everybody else
Doing the
here.
math in my head, like, no way.
This girl's done Ancestry.com, you know?
Yeah, you know.
No, which would have been what, the 80s, 90s?
Yeah, that would have been the early 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, the early 80s.
I just had to, Americans, we're not good with geography
Yeah,
and
no,
history.
That's more history.
Yeah, so-
Yeah, you could spoil.
We try to forget. We try to forget.
I have no idea what happened. Sorry.
So it's okay. So we ended up in Chicago, middle of the city. Grew up down the street from Wrigley Field. My exposure to nature was Lincoln Park Zoo, which I believe is still the only last free zoo in the country.
Whoa.
What
What does
so
that mean?
that means it's public. So you can,
Oh,
there's,
literally
free, like literally
Yeah.
free. It's like a park, essentially,
I know.
Is that why you're the producer?
Well, I don't know. That can mean so many things. Like
Yeah.
the animals, are they? They're not
like
really
free roam?
the animals
Yeah, it's
aren't
not
free.
like a
That's a safari park.
That's a safari park.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although a safari park in the middle of downtown Chicago would be great. Because it really is. It's in the middle of the city.
It really
you
is,
know?
yeah.
Minus so many.
And the Lake
Yeah.
Michigan's right there. It's beautiful.
And Lake Michigan is right there. And so that was pretty much
Cool.
my exposure. And maybe about 20 or so years ago, my parents started looking for a second home to get out of the winters in Chicago. And they ended up in the hill country. And they bought a ranch out near Sisterdale. And I never thought that living in Texas was a thing that would happen. It was just a vacation home. I was a professional photographer for a long time up in Chicago. I did live performance, burlesque a lot. I worked in circus. I was very much an urban kid. But then one year, all my camera equipment got stolen, effectively like ending my career. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
And when was this?
This was 2014.
Okay.
So this was in 2014. And so I was kind of wandering around trying to figure out, what I was going to do. That was my identity at the time. And I had already reinvented myself a couple of times and it had felt like home. And so it was very much like a death. I was grieving for a long time. I still haven't bought a camera, So I decided to take the safest risks that I knew, which was move to my parents' ranch in Texas. No idea what I was going to do there. My friends considered it my retirement. They were like, she's just going to go retire to raise
Urban alternative Chicago and
Yeah.
moving to a ranch in Texas.
Moving to a ranch
In
in Texas.
Sisterdale.
In Sisterdale. And so I thought, hey, maybe, I can't do my photography. Obviously, the editorial, fashion, burlesque, circus scene doesn't really exist in rural Texas
Not in
just
public,
yet.
at
Not in
least.
public, at least. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll be a chef. We had a lot of dinner parties in Chicago, supper clubs, things like that. My dad is from a line of chefs. I'm a reasonably good cook. And so I started kind of looking into that. And I went to the Culinary Institute in San Antonio. And I think I got the best advice I've ever gotten there. And the counselor, the admittance lady told me, if you've never done restaurant work, then you need to go work in a restaurant for 6 months and then decide if being a chef is what you want to do, because it's expensive. And I said, oh, that sounds reasonable. And so I went looking for work, and I worked kind of odd jobs in restaurants here and there. And I realized that I wasn't enough of a masochist, to kind of take that on, to be a chef in a restaurant. Yeah. That I had really come to Texas to kind of look for a quieter life. Yeah. And so I ended up answering a Craigslist ad that were looking for game processing. And I had no idea what game processing was. But it said, learn knife skills. And I was like, ooh, a chef needs knife skills. I've never done that before. And so, but I didn't know what game meant. I didn't know really that hunting was still a thing. For me, hunting kind of existed in like the murky corners of my world. It wasn't part of my life. It wasn't part of a culture that I knew. And, but I knew that knife skills were handy for chefs to have. And so I thought, well, this is something new and different, and that's something I've never done before. And that's like right up my alley, Yeah. It's like, oh, I don't know that. Let's go learn about it. Yeah. So I remember calling my now boss and him saying, well, you have no experience and you don't know what you're doing. So we'll probably just have you wash dishes, package meat. And I was like, that's fine. I think that like I'll learn by osmosis. Maybe one day I'll be lucky and, one of these professional butchers will pull me aside and be like, hey. Yeah. But 10 minutes into my first day, and let me backtrack. I landed in the middle of hunting season. So I landed in December.
What year would this have been?
This would have been 2016. So I moved to Texas in 2015 and kind of wandered around aimlessly for a year.
Sure.
And
we've all had journeys like that.
I'm trying to figure it out. And then so 2016 is when I landed at my job at the shop. And it was the middle of the season. And it's one of those things that if you're breathing, we'll hire you, And they were like, well, she seems like a reasonably capable human. And 10 minutes into my first day, they took me off of packaging and put a knife in my hand. And I'd been there ever since. So I'm going into, I think like my 7th or 8th deer season, so 2016. Yeah, like my 7th deer season.
Wow.
And you work at the same processor?
I work at the same processor.
Yeah, what is that?
That's Cow Creek Taxidermy and Game Processing. We're out of Bernie, in the middle of nowhere also. It's about, like 7 minutes from my ranch. It's very word of mouth. My boss is this, like, just cool dude. His family is one of the founding families in the area. Wow. He's been doing game processing, butchery in some form of another since he was 4 years old. He's our taxidermist. So he does taxidermy, award-winning, like awesome guy. And he really kind of took me under his wing. I think after I was hired on as seasonal. And after my first season there, he like pulled me aside, and he's always got like a big old chaw right here and nice like southern drawl, and he's like
Texas.
Yeah, like Texas. I do have him saved in my phone as John Wayne, because he is just like, he goes to me, well, Kris Abigail, you've done me a good job. I should like to keep you on and teach you. And I was like,
I love it.
Yeah. And I was like, yes, sir.
Yeah.
And so over the last few years, he's really sort of mentored me and helped me sort of grow in this career. And throughout it, I think one of the things that really struck me at first was how much I didn't know about the food I was eating. It was, I came down here, I think, thinking that I was a like very open-minded, educated, cultured sort of person, and was sort of confronted with a lot of my own biases and my own thoughts about hunting and conservation. And
what were those thoughts? If you could
well,
share
those thoughts were that hunting was still barbaric, right? Hunting was the de-evolution of man. Because you're told that your cows are free range. And really, honestly, you don't even really think about it.
No.
Really, so, you know, it's very rare that you'll meet someone that actually does consciously think about it. Yeah. And so when I came down here and I started working for a man that on the surface is like my complete opposite. Right? Very rural, grew up hunting, grew up in the country. But I have learned so much from him about how to really truly be an open human being. You know, and I'm gonna start crying. I didn't know. I really do. I love him.
That's great.
That's awesome.
But you know, I remember asking if I could learn more, you know, learn how to actually take, you know, carcasses apart and do all that. And slowly over time, you know, is brought in. It's a dirty job. Mm-hmm. And it's not a job that women typically do. And so there was a bit, I think, of a natural sort of resistance.
Sure.
You know, it's like women can, but they shouldn't. It's ugly. It's dirty, you know.
Yeah. Or why would you?
Why would you, right?
Based on stereotypes.
Yeah. And, but for me, it was incredible to think about the fact that I could never get away from the fact that this was an animal. There's no point in the process of what I do that I can forget that what I'm doing is I'm taking muscles from a living creature that life was taken, life was sacrificed, however you want to frame it for yourself. This animal died. And then you're taking this animal apart and turning it into food. And that whole process to me was life-changing.
It's beautiful in a way.
It is. It really made me, I think, a more compassionate, a more empathetic person. It really made me consider what I like to call our invisible labor, right? When we go out to the store, H-E-B, right? And we go to H-E-B and we go buy a steak and we enjoy it. Maybe we think about, you know, the price of the steak, or maybe we think about, oh, I'm going to buy it from this farm, or we think about the person at the checkout, but you don't think about the farmer that gets up or the rancher that gets up at 3 or 4 a.m. whose political ideologies may not be yours, but they're still getting up to feed you, right? They're still feeding you. And then you talk about the folks that are in the meat plants, right? The slaughtermen. You talk about the processors, you know, the folks that are in our industrialized farming, in the industrialized farming industry that suffer a lot mentally and physically from the work, and they're not acknowledged, right? It's a tough job, and it's a dirty job, and it's a necessary job, and it provides the one thing that we all have in common, despite what we believe, despite how we live, everything, right? Like, we all eat, and we all eat food. And so I started thinking about all these people that we don't see, that we don't acknowledge. And I thought to myself, well, I'm in a position where I've come from a very urban network of people who were just as ignorant as I am. And I have the ability basically to be the ambassador, right? To say, hey, all my friends, everyone I know, this is what meat looks like before it becomes your meat. Let's talk about it. Because I started thinking about how, as meat eaters, if you're eating meat, you have a responsibility for the stewardship of the animals that you're eating. And if it's hard for you to confront that fact that you are eating an animal and that you're responsible for the stewardship of it, then I think you have to take a look and reconsider your relationship to food. So then maybe you don't need to be eating meat. I always say that even I'm a butcher, but I have probably more in common with vegans and vegetarians, than I do with commercial meat eaters. Because for me, hunting is the most sustainable and ethical way to source your meat. I think, and that was like a huge change from thinking about hunting being like the de-evolution or barbaric of man to realize that it's actually
the most honoring way.
The most honoring way. The most
a lot of respect. Yeah.
So much respect. There's in every subset of a culture, you have 10%, maybe even less, 1 to 5% of the population that ruins it for everybody else, right? 98% of hunters are out there who they know more about the animal they're hunting than the people who are saying don't hunt those animals.
Yeah.
They have more love, more respect, more knowledge, more acknowledgement, and more honor in what they're doing. I love, I can butcher beef and pigs and all of that, but I love wild game because those carcasses tell me a story, right? Mm-hmm. You look at an animal, you can see what part of Texas it's from. Or, a lot of times I'll get elk from New Mexico, elk from Colorado.
You can tell the difference.
You can tell the difference. Some, they come with mesquite thorns, right? They come with cactus thorns. They come with broken ribs. They come with arrowheads that didn't kill them that the body then calcified around.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
And that in itself, it's like you're in this constant data download, I would say, like from nature, right? Like every animal, I always tell my crew that every animal is the same, but every animal is different. And to me, that's like really beautiful because every animal has the same basic structure, right? But they come to you having lived a whole life. And that whole life is on your table, And so to me, my job is to honor the animal. No matter what the animal has gone through, it's like my job is to make the best possible food out of this animal.
Yeah.
To honor it, to get the most from it, get whatever you can, and in that way, I think that wild game is great for like the culinary imagination, right? I think that wild game has had this bad rap of being gamey, or not being good for anything other than burger. And so a lot of hunters, that's what they'll do.
Yeah.
Or sausage, and it's like, oh, but you could do so much more and just honor the animal in a different way, explore what you can do. And at that same time, incorporate the animal, into lots of different dishes, but when it came to being a chef versus being a butcher, I definitely found, for me personally, a lot more purpose in the butchery part of the culinary world. Yeah. It's super cool. It's so much fun.
It is really fun.
It's fun, My first hunt, and probably like my first and really only hunt, was Aoudad. My friends happen to know these people out of Mason, Texas, and they run a ranch out there called Operation Orphan, which everyone should look up. And what they do is that they take foster kids, kids in like orphanages, and they take them to the outdoors and they take them to this, I think it's like 600 acres. I mean, it's pretty big. And then they have some surrounding ranches where they'll take the kids out, shoot them, teach them how to shoot, and they can hunt aoudad, black buck, access, and whitetail. And aoudad, they overrun things. So it just so happened that they needed some aoudads called. And I had gotten to the point of, in my butchery career, that I was like, it's time, right? This is like the next step.
Yeah, you honor it on the back end.
Yeah.
That was going to be a question I asked, is have you ever honored it on the front end?
Yeah, and that was, I don't think I've ever felt more part of the cycle of like nature and life than I did at that moment. Mm. Yeah, it was really an indescribable feeling of, I think, humility in a lot of ways. And, you just sit there and I'm watching these aoudads come up in the morning. And there's like a group of 60 of them.
Yeah, so many.
So many. And they were just like, and for a long time we just watched them, converge. And there was a few times that I had like the opportunity to take the shot. And of course I was like nervous as all hell. As I'd never done it before. But I knew, it's like I knew I needed to do it. But I had also told myself that if it wasn't the right shot and it wasn't the right moment, that I was okay walking away with nothing. And so I had like 5 or 6 opportunities to take a shot. But they were never quite right. And it feels like you're sitting there in that moment and you're just asking for nature to like give you the right moment. You're not trying to control it. You're not trying to create it, and you're just in a place of asking. At least for me, I was in a place of just asking. And when I took my aoudad, it was a ewe, a nice sized ewe. She was off on her own. And I remember that she like looked up into the sun. The sun had just started coming up. And I was like, it's now or never. It's like we got to do this. You got to take this step because this is the only way you're going to know. This is the only way. And I took the shot and she went down immediately. And I remember my guide, Brian, and my friend Donna were with me, and they just were both like in utter shock because aoudads are known for being really hardy and for running off into the brush. And they had warned us, hey, you probably won't get a one and done. They're hardy. They'll run off into the brush. And that thought, and I know that it happens. I mean, I've seen it happen. I've been with hunters when it happens. The bad shot happens. But you always like want it to not be that time. You do, I think, everything you can to make sure that it's not that time. And I felt so grateful. I did a heart and lung shot. So she went down. Immediately. She was done immediately. And I went down and I sat with her for a minute and I thanked her. And I remember that I think that Brian prayed. And we took the quintessential hunt shot, right? Yeah.
I've never been. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, you got your rifle and you've got your animal. And when we were talking about the biases that I faced, that was one of the last ones I think that I overcame. Because when you don't hunt and you're not in hunting and you're not in the outdoors and you see a picture of a person with a rifle and a dead animal, all you feel is how cruel, how sad.
Seems like ego.
Yeah. What a braggart, right? But when we took my photo, it wasn't that at all. It was, I wanted every possible way of honoring this animal.
And remembering.
And remembering how it felt
Yeah.
in that moment. Like how humble and how grateful and how connected. Like it was like how connected you are to everything. Yeah. And so then I took that photo and I remember putting it on my Facebook and knowing, here we go. It was like, it was okay that I was a butcher before, but now I'm quote unquote a killer. Mm-hmm. And I remember writing a post about it and saying the exact same thing. I took this photo and I'm posting this photo because you need to know what these photos actually mean. I know from like the photographer's standpoint, and now I know from like a hunter standpoint, how meaningful, because it takes you back to that moment. It takes you back to like this sense of purpose. It takes you back to how it felt to be vulnerable in that moment, and then to trust yourself, to trust the moment, to trust the process. And then by that same token, after we took her and we took her back to the shop and I butchered her and made delicious food out of her, I got her done as a Euro. It's a Euro mount, so they take the... Okay.
Hunter doesn't know.
All right. So a Euro mount is...
Like a French style?
Oh my God, I wish. Like maybe like a little mustache. Like a little...
Cigarette.
A beret.
Well, now she's going to get dressed up every holiday, which my friend Donna does do, which I totally love and appreciate. But so Euro mount is essentially they take the skull, sans jaw, and they bleach it.
Okay.
Along with horns or racks or whatever, and then they mount it onto a...
I think we got one in here.
Yeah.
That is Euro mount Longhorn.
Yeah. So I got my Aoudad done as a Euro mount, as another way of understanding that taxidermy in its own way is not about being a trophy, but about honoring this animal that once walked among us, and this animal was given a purpose. And so she hangs up in my meat room now. And so I look at her every day. And it always just reminds me of like the purpose of what we do.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
It's so incredible that you got to experience that from start to finish, literally, because so many hunters don't get to, butcher the animal and honor them in that way. So you got literally to step from start to finish with that animal and are still honoring her today. And that's really, what a beautiful memory. Thank you for sharing.
And your hands were the only ones that touched it. From
I wasn't so proficient at skinning then, so my friend Dee taught me how to skin. Field dressing, the field dressing part. But, I was there. My hands were dirty. My hands were in it still. Absolutely. And Haley, you make a great point about hunters not knowing really how to butcher and how to, like, think about the animal in a different way. And that's sort of been another part of it where I find that aside from the beauty and the like spiritual aspect that I find in butchery or the art is really the base that it's an incredible skill, right? It's a great life skill.
Sure.
It just is. It's a good thing to know, especially if we're advocating for stewardship, especially if we're advocating for more people in outdoor spaces, right? It's you have to give people not just the access, but also the resources and the knowledge to then be able to feed their families. So that's been part of like my mission as well in trying to do more like butchery education. I've been lucky enough to be the on-site butcher for a few hunts, working with new hunters. That's like my absolute favorite. That's I love it because it takes me back to my first hunt. And you're in there with that moment with them and having this experience, and that adrenaline, you get like adrenaline rush, by association. And then you can get down to like the work. I think that the work of butcher your own animal, even if you only do it once, and then you say, this is too hard, I'm just going to give it to Kris Abigail, which is like my preferred version. It's important to do the work. We've gotten away from feeling purpose and accomplishment and getting our hands dirty and doing like just work. Dirty, unpretty, messy, get your hands in there and just do the work, because you feel such a sense of accomplishment. And I've noticed that whenever I teach, especially women who come up to me and say, oh, Kris Abigail, I could never do that. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to put a knife in your hand, because there's this sense of empowerment and then the sense of accomplishment, because not only are you going through the discomfort of it, right? It's like, it's never comfortable to butcher an animal. I've been doing it for 7 years and I'm still like, this is an animal, but we're not good at being uncomfortable. And I think that it's a good thing to be uncomfortable. Discomfort breeds growth. Yeah. Right? And so if you can be uncomfortable and go through the process of butchering your own animal or watching an animal get butchered, and then see how it's been turned into food that then sustains and nourishes your family, holy, it's a revelation. It really truly is. So I really try to I have a collaborative in Chicago that we call the Buck Wild Babes. And it's myself, my chef friend, Jacqueline Lord, and our sommelier. And we would do these crucial. She's our sommelier and our, what does she like to call it? Not mixologist, but I'm gonna fuck it up. Sorry.
Chemist.
Yeah, she's like a beverage chemist.
Alchemy. Right?
Alchemy. Yeah. She actually, we did these pop-up dinners in Chicago, and I brought an access deer up, and I butchered half an access deer in front of, like, in the middle of, I think it was like Logan Square, urban Chicago.
Wild. Love it.
Yeah. And we talked about the same conversations we're having, right? About stewardship, about the discomfort of seeing an animal being butchered and what that means with your relationship to food and what that means with your relationship to yourself, And so, folks got to have this demo and then they got to eat the access. And I remember folks coming up to me after that first dinner and saying what a changed experience it was for them. I remember in particular, there's this one person that had never eaten heart before. And we gave them access heart. And that they felt connected to the animal. So, and at that point, they had no part in the hunting or in the butchery or in the food prep. They were merely a spectator, to the whole thing. And to still feel some connection to that animal simply because you're presented with it in front of you, I thought was really powerful. It gets people to think about things in a different way. Not everyone has the privilege to say, okay, I'm going to go buy half a cow, right? Or I'm going to go hunt, or I'm going to do this. We don't all have the same privilege and access. But I think that at least the acknowledgement of when you go to the store and you buy a steak or you buy something, if you at least take the moment to think about the life, to think about the welfare of the animal, to think about the welfare of the people that participate, I think that sort of enacts change, right?
Yeah.
And that's really, I'm an advocate for direct rancher to, customer sales. And I'm a really big advocate for getting people out in the outdoors. you know, and I want to be able to do whatever I can to teach these people this skill that I learned that I think is both empowering and necessary.
Yeah.
So for 7 years, you've done this trade, this skill. And then it seems like, you know, it started as a skill, as a trade, and it grew into more of a philosophy.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, what's next? Are you guys going to continue to be a butcher, a game processor? Is there more there?
Yeah, I think that I definitely have no plans to stop butchering. For me, if you don't do the work, you can't call yourself that. You know, you're constantly, I'm still learning.
Sure.
You know, I feel like I'm at still the very beginning of my journey in terms of butchery and wild game and preserving this old way of doing things, and really getting myself out there. I have a couple of hunts coming up with Bashir from Hunters of Color.
Yeah, we had him on.
Yeah, he's super cool. And he reached out, you know, and so things like that where I'm put in a position to be able to share what I know with people is really important to me. I'm working on launching this podcast as well that I call The Meat Room.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm filming, going to start filming episodes and then hopefully launch it by opening weekend of deer season. So that'll be fun. Just because I know so many cool people doing so many cool things. And like y'all, you know, it's like I would love to just be able to have conversations with other butchers, you know, especially other women in the industry. You know, as a female butcher, I'm a rarity. As a wild game butcher, I am even more of a rarity. Yeah. You know, I think I know of one. I believe she's like in Montana and it's her family's business. So she's been doing it her whole life. You know, I'm a Latina. And so I think that there's a lot of crossover in who I am and what I do, where I would like to be a bridge, right? Because I think that I both represent a woman of color in what is a male dominated industry.
Sure.
But I also represent hunters, conservation, and the outdoors to people who may think differently about what this is. You know, and I think that's really important. It's important from both. And so it's like, if I'm able to be sort of an ambassador to that conversation of where, hey, hunting is conservation. Hunting is not just trophy hunting. That exists. But even trophy hunting has its benefits.
Conservation,
It's still towards conservation. It's still, you know, if you have like folks who go kill lions and, you know, in Africa and how they're derided for that. But what people don't realize is that meat can't travel back.
Yeah.
And that animal isn't just getting thrown out in the field.
Right.
You know, you have villages that will sell these hunts.
Yeah. And that money's hopefully going to preserve that species.
Yeah. And you know,
and also feeding that village.
And so feeding that village.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a different way of framing things that I think leads to more empathetic, compassionate conversations. And hopefully maybe more doors opening to folks who don't typically have access.
Yeah.
You know, there's this saying that like your mere existence is a revolution, right? And so like simply, I think by being who I am, I hope to bring more light to the fact that brown and people of color need more access to the outdoors, but also that to urban culture, that ranchers and hunters And people who are in the outdoors, they're the ones that are conserving our green spaces.
Yeah.
They are really the ones that are raising the funds, doing the work, so that we can all enjoy it.
They're actually the boots on the ground.
They're the boots on the ground.
Who, and even if they don't agree, who would make a difference if you just spoke with them. They're your brethren,
Yeah.
And like, I do feel like you're somebody who has, just looking at you, like you have your feet, you look like a butcher from Logan Square with the park. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you're a wild game butcher in Sisterdale. And you're someone who I feel like truly has your feet in two worlds.
Yeah.
And so to be able to, like you say, a bridge, like I feel that.
Yeah, I love that so much.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do we have time for our speech questions still, Haley? Let's do it.
We can.
We can, if you want.
Yeah, why not?
Okay. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
We had this last time. That was travel, though.
Travel. Live.
Live.
New Braunfels, Texas, baby.
Yeah, I love her.
Austin, Texas, baby.
BY.
That's mine.
With a summer in Paris.
Yeah, for real. I'd say somewhere on a beach, some tacos and beer. That's all I need.
Yeah.
What animal, if it could talk, would be the scariest?
Oh.
Good question. Praying mantis, bro.
I
I mean, those things creep me.
I'd say
good.
I'd say rodents, mice,
Mm-hmm.
because they'll be in your house.
They're
so
talking
And you'd hear their
smack too.
voices,
They're
you
talking
know?
So
smack.
many of them.
But what if they're like
Yeah, but then
Jerry?
you'd hear voices in your home
Everywhere.
and you'd be like,
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that.
I wouldn't kill. Unfortunately,
Oh.
though, then you wouldn't kill them.
Yeah,
right.
Because then they'd become like
Yeah.
Stuart Little or
Yeah.
little French guy. What's
Yeah.
his name?
Ratatouille.
Yeah.
Hey, if he cooks you dinner though. that's all
Yeah,
that
I mean,
matters.
can you put them to work? Like, do they
Yeah.
speak?
I think there'd be more respect.
Are they still like
Get out of my grave.
Yeah.
IQ's still low?
Yeah,
you know?
the IQ.
Right,
Like,
right.
what do they say when they speak?
Okay, and then a movie is being made about your story and life. Who is playing you?
Mm.
Mm.
Okay, I mean, I know who I'd want to play me, you know,
Let's
but
go. Go big or go
who
home.
would probably play me is like Kevin James.
Oh, no.
I see like a
Okay,
Jonah
who would
Hill
you want
for
to
you.
play you?
Jonah Hill.
Yeah,
about
Jonah Hill.
Jonah Hill. That seems as bad as
Yeah, Jonah Hill's
as
great.
Kevin
He's
James.
hilarious.
I'm gonna go Ben Stiller.
Ben
I
Stiller.
feel like it just fits.
He's
So much
hairy like
shorter than
you.
you, though.
That's right. People don't know that about him.
Yeah, he's little.
And you're not. You're super tall.
So tall.
Thank you.
No one
Great
ever knows.
Compliment.
It's like, that's the nicest thing
Great
anyone's
compliment.
ever said to me.
So nice. I'm like 5'11".
Well, everyone's super tall compared to me, so.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is
I don't know.
true. I don't know either, honestly.
Yeah. I'll tell you that maybe Nora Jones.
Nora Jones.
Yeah.
That's a good answer.
Yeah. Just because I think she's pretty.
Yeah. I like
Absolutely.
that.
This tracks.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like Ryan Reynolds, but
Chris
Oh my
Hemsworth,
God.
duh.
I'm going to
He
go Rachel
wishes.
McAdams.
Yeah. That's
Ooh, I love
Rachel McAdams?
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
that's a
See
good
that.
choice. Yeah, I can
can't
see that.
She's just as sassy as you.
She's great, and she can do it all.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's
All right,
awesome.
That's all I got.
Thank you, Haley.
Thank you,
Sponsored
Haley.
by Spindrift.
Hopefully.
Blood orange tangerine
Yeah.
The
For
wild-
your local butcher.
for your local wild game butcher.
Tastes just like the real thing.
Have you done anything with Jesse Griffith's hunt? What's his hunt thing called?
New school traditional cookery.
New School
Mhm.
Traditional Cookery.
Yeah, I was the hunts that I was the on-site
Okay,
butcher
cool.
with.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so
awesome. 'Cause I
yeah.
want to talk about like pigs for a second, like because it's so interesting. Like people, I agree with everything you've said to this point.
Yeah.
For some reason, when it comes to killing pigs, I'm just like, whatever. Like, let's just
Why you don't
Throw
like to
'em in
eat
the-
good food?
no. Well, let me have it. I'm sure I'm wrong, but like for when it comes to killing pigs, just like
Yeah.
kill them all and throw them in the bushes.
Why?
That's just what I've done.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I don't know, just because
'Cause they're
necessity. Maybe it's just
a nuisance.
how I
Well, it's
was taught. Maybe,
Yeah.
and
yeah,
But I know I have eaten them, and
Okay.
and they are good. You know.
yeah,
You're talking
if-
local
if done
wild
right.
pigs.
Wild
yeah.
boar,
Wild boar. Yeah.
But that, for the most part,
Not Babe.
is not
Not Babe.
Yeah.
Oh, if Babe got out,
Well, we wouldn't throw him in the bushes. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, well,
he would if Babe got out, because when they get out,
they become
wild.
so that essentially
Yeah,
Babe
so-
did get out.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
ranch we've been to, he talked
Yeah.
about how pure pastures,
Yeah,
regenerative
yeah.
ranching. They have pigs, and they said one of their batch of pigs, wild boars, got in there, and they were able to get them out. They didn't get any of the kids in, but just because it was around them,
Yeah.
and just because it inseminated some of them, it put an instinctual nature in them that you couldn't breed out, and so it
What?
ruined the pigs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Calf? No way.
No,
Really?
really. Yeah, so they had to get rid of the whole batch of pigs because they just
man.
became wild.
Wow. Interesting.
Wow.
Anyways,
Okay.
what's your work? Great story, Hunter. No. What's your thought process on that?
So I think that it's just the way that it's always been.
Mhm.
You know, that people will see them as a nuisance. Again, it speaks to our disconnection, right? They don't sit there and look at it and think pork. They sit there and think of it and see pest,
Yeah.
right? Because they're not,
Good.
because they've never seen a pig butchered, seen how bacon is made, seen where pork chops come from, you know, or a lot of times, you know, back, you know, like my boss used to raise pigs. So if they already had pigs, why would they want wild pigs, you know? So it's just an old school way of thought.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's a shit ton of pigs.
Oh yeah.
And they're just spreading. Texas everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? And so then you start thinking about food sources, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're a food source. They are an easy food source. And so if you don't want to deal with it, you could just bring them to your local wild game butcher, Kris Abigail.
Yeah.
Shout out.
Yeah.
And she'll take care of it for you.
Yeah. That's
And
Take
turn
that
it
pest off
into-
your hands.
Yeah.
Let me just take it off your hands. I do. I've heard a lot of folk who will do the same thing. They'll just go out, kill them all, and, you know, throw them in a pile and ignore them.
Mm.
And my thought has always been like, listen, if you don't want it, I do. I love trash meat. It's like, you don't, dad, all of that, like, y'all don't want it, we'll take it.
Yeah.
Because it's really a matter of how you butcher it, how you cook it. You know, gamier animals may require heavier spice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so like if you've got if you've got a pronghorn, right? Like an aoudad, animals that are eaten in Asia, in the Middle East, in Africa, then you start thinking about, okay, well, what does that cuisine, you know, what kind of spices do they use?
What do they do? Yeah.
What do they do? Right? What do they do? You know, just culinary like butchery is different regionally. It's different, you know, globally. So it's a
culturally.
matter of just thinking creatively, really,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
about what your pigs could
Yeah,
do. You know,
absolutely.
I mean, you could really field dress. A lot of people just don't want to field dress them because they're full of ticks. You know, they're
Stinky.
nasty.
Yeah.
They're stinky. You know, I mean, gut them, but bring them to me hide on. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Take care of it. It's
We'll
funny.
take care of it.
It's funny. You know what also used to be, there used to be a shit ton of, buffalo.
Buffalo.
You know, that
Yeah.
I'm kind of reminded of that,
Yeah.
you know, seeing them piled up and
Yeah.
pictures of that and stuff. Granted, pigs reproduce at a way different rate, I'm sure.
Right.
than
Yeah. Well, they
buffalo, but-
can. I mean, my biology science is going to be all wrong on this, but they can produce pretty quickly after.
After
We learned. Didn't we learn this at our pure pastures?
Yeah, the
I think
the
it's-
gestation's not
This
very
ju-
long,
yeah.
but you get multiple in a litter, don't
Yeah.
you? With pigs?
Yeah, you get
like
multiple.
Whereas at a cow, you're looking at
1, 2
Yeah.
a year, maybe.
Yeah.
Pigs,
Yeah.
I think, are like 6 to 20.
Yeah.
3
There
times
is,
a year.
and there is a lot of, speaking of to bison, I love bison. They are, my next tattoo is on my mind of getting a bison
Nice.
tattoo
Heck yeah.
because I heard a story about how when it's a storm, when it's storming, right, that bison just kind of charge through.
Yeah.
Yeah, the storm.
You know, to get to the other side. And I sort of feel like that's very relevant to like my butcher career, really like my approach in life is like, you know, I always tell my crew, just be the buffalo, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you get something done? You just like one bite at a time, right? Just like be the buffalo and get through it. And so there's a lot of like bison reintroduction, you know,
sure, yeah,
happening. Ranches are starting to grow them back. You know, they're beautiful animals.
What is Dance with Wolves? Dance with Wolves, seen it?
Mm-hmm.
Tatanka? What are the Native Americans call it?
Maybe, yeah.
Y'all haven't seen it. You haven't seen it.
You've never seen Dances with Wolves?
I've seen it, but I just don't remember.
I don't watch anything with Kevin Costner. I'm kidding.
That's blasphemy.
You've watched Waterworld?
I do.
I've seen Waterworld, yeah.
Okay. I've never seen Waterworld.
What's the movie where he just switches his accent halfway through the movie?
I think that's Waterworld.
Earlier you have. I digress. Well, Haley, do you have one more section for us? Do you have it on this date?
Yep, on this date. July 7th, 1928, sliced bread was sold for the first time by a bakery in Missouri.
How about that?
Sliced bread?
Best
Was
thing
sold
since
for the first
sliced
time.
bread.
Wasn't it that Betty White was born before sliced bread?
I think I've seen that before.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wow.
What does that mean?
I mean, she
Like,
was born
it's in our
before sliced
lifetime.
bread.
Yeah,
You
she
know,
was born
it's-
before. Yeah, you know the saying. It's like
What year was that? 1920?
1928.
1928.
Oh, she died this recently. That's right.
Yeah.
Rest in peace.
Rip.
Man, sliced bread. That's.
Yeah.
What do you think they said
Well,
before that date?
What
Best
is
thing
the
since
phrase?
Betty White.
Best thing since Betty White.
And then like
That's the best thing.
sliced bread, just like she's like a year old. She's like
That's
best
good.
thing since
Yeah.
Betty White.
Yeah.
What do you
Oh.
think the haters of sliced bread said? Like, why are you slicing that?
So
That's
wait,
Lazy.
so
They
or
tell
is
them,
it
like,
just
this new
baguettes
generation-
before? Is that the...
Yeah, it was just a loaf of bread. You can't
Yeah, they
slice a
couldn't
loaf
slice.
of
You
bread.
could slice it
That-
yourself.
You know what? That was the start of our disconnection for food.
Yeah,
when they
yeah,
started
when they-
slicing our bread
Now
for us.
machines do it.
Yeah.
Well, when was the Great Depression?
These
I bet they
kids
were
don't
slicing
know.
it up for like portion control, you know?
Oh.
So it wouldn't go bad.
Wow.
Wow.
Producer slash
1929.
historian.
Yeah. Is that
Yeah.
true?
Except for I don't know when. the Great
1929.
Depression
When was it
started.
created? When was it created?
1928.
This is
1929
America. We
was
can
Great
make our own
Depression.
history.
There you go.
Incredible.
Wow.
28
Just
was
in
kinda-
time.
It probably started
Just in
27,
time.
28.
The wind
Maybe
started
that's
probably blowing.
what
Yeah.
Prius, just like brought it about. People just got lazy because now their bread was being sliced.
Yeah.
It is also a very American thing.
Well, also they probably realized they can get more money from it. if
Yeah.
they sell
That's a very
individuals.
American thing.
It's all very American.
Yeah, it is all very.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
I-
sandwiches, life changing.
I disagree.
Can I
I'm a big
make a
sandwich guy.
request?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we open up one of those sausages?
Right
Heck
now?
yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Let's
Been
do it.
waiting for you
Yeah.
to say that all day.
Okay.
Let me use my knife over here.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'll grab it. Do we have a knife in here?
What's your flathead knife?
I got a gun.
Let's all just pass it around and
Yeah, I mean that's how we would do it at hunt camp, right? Yeah, it's the same. There, it's vacuum
come on, use
sealed.
your muscles. You're gonna have to button up your Hawaiian shirt one more button if you can't rip that open.
It's like, yeah. that's
Cheers.
Cheers. Here. So, it's okay.
Is this what smoked with post oak as well?
So
Oh,
this
it smells
is
so good.
this is our cold smoke, and then we'll put it in our dry house.
You didn't even wait. You just.
I didn't.
Good thing she's off camera.
Don't smack it.
Cheers.
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 This is great. I want to end on this question you can chew. Well,
Okay.
I ask it. It's a question that we ask everybody. In one sentence, if possible, what does the outdoors mean to you?
Oh. The outdoors to me is connection. I think if I was going to say it in one word, it's connection. Whether it's connecting as a hunter to your prey, whether it's connecting on a hike with other people, whether it's bird watching, whether it's gardening, whether it's talking on Facebook to other gardeners, farmers, ranch, like anything is all about connection, I would say.
That's good. I like that answer.
He's connecting with his sausage.
Yeah. This is
Let me
connection
narrate.
right here.
Coleman slowly chews the rest of his sausage, waiting to close.
Well, that's all we have time for, unfortunately. Plug your stuff, though. Where can people take their stuff to you? Where can they reach out?
Plug the podcast, whatever you got.
Oh, everything. Okay, so you can find me on Instagram under Kris Abigail. It's sausage.
Yeah, it's spicy.
It's spicy. It's KRISS_ABIGILGAIL. I do know how to spell my own name.
Yeah.
It's 2 first names.
They can find you.
Yeah. And then I'm launching the Meat Room in November, and you can find that on Spotify. And you can bring me your hunted animals to Cow Creek Taxidermy and Game Processing. We're near Sisterdale out of Bernie. Find us on Instagram under Cow Creek Nation. Find us on Facebook. I'm there all the time. We're awesome. The dry sausage proves it.
Yes. So very good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very good.
So good. Thank you so much
We can attest.
for coming on again.
Thank
your
y'all.
story is awesome. It's amazing just to hear about, or just look at your story and be able to be like, man, what would have happened if your camera gear did not get stuck right? Where would you be today? So,
Yeah.
Really great. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all. This has been so great.
Absolutely.
This is my first time.
We'll do it again.
Okay.
We will.